If you had to choose between duty and the one person who made you feel human again, what would you do? That's not a question a Texas Ranger is supposed to ask himself. But I did. I still do. Every time the wind shifts and brings with it the scent of sage and river mud, I remember her. I remember the way her hands trembled the first time she touched me. Strong, careful, uninvited. And yet, the most welcome thing I've ever known. The town was called Esperanza, a small, dust-choked place, stitched to the southern edge of Texas like a torn seam. The kind of town where both languages were spoken, but neither trusted, where the river was more than a line on a map. It was a wound that never quite healed. I arrived just after dusk. The sun still glowed behind the mesquite trees, but the streets were already emptied. That's how you knew the kind of fear this town carried. It had a bedtime, not for children, but for souls. I'd been riding 6 days straight. My ribs ached with every breath. There was a cut along my side from a Comanche arrow, half-healed and angry, and my horse was limping more than I was. The only thing that kept me upright was spite, and the badge on my chest that told me I was still somebody in a world trying to forget my name. Sheriff Delgado met me at the cantina. Thin man, hollow eyes, always smelled like pepper and sweat. He didn't ask what brought me to Esperanza. He didn't have to. The ranger star on my jacket did all the talking. "There's trouble," he said. "People disappearing in the brush, cattle gone, a few ranchers dead." "Bandits?" I asked. He shook his head. "Something worse. Something that knows where we sleep." I told him I'd stay the week, scout the trails, make myself visible. He looked at me hard then. "You speak Spanish?" "Enough." He nodded. "Good, because around here, English won't get you answers. Just doors slammed in your face." The room I rented was above the livery. Thin walls, tin roof, heat like a preacher's sermon. I lay on the cot, ribs screaming, side pulsing with heat, thinking maybe this time the wound would take me. Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad way to go, bleeding out in some nowhere town, badge still on, duty done. But then she came. I didn't know her name yet. Just that she stepped into my room without knocking, a shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders, and eyes like thunderclouds waiting to break. "You're burning," she said. Her voice was low, calm, but I heard something else beneath it. Not fear, defiance. A quiet rage that made me sit up despite the pain. "I don't remember sending for a doctor," I muttered. "You didn't," she said, pulling a satchel from her hip. "Sheriff Delgado sent me. He knows better than to let a man die just because he's too proud to ask for help." I stared at her. Dark hair braided down her back, skin like roasted chestnuts, and eyes that didn't flinch when they looked into mine. "You're the healer," I said. "Curandera," she corrected. "I've heard about you." "I'm sure you have." Her name was Camilla. I didn't know then that this woman, this quiet storm, would be the one to tear open every line I thought I'd drawn between right and wrong. She knelt beside me without asking permission, lifted my shirt, and examined the wound. Her hands were cool, gentle, but the touch still made me flinch. "You've been bleeding slow," she said, "but steady. Like my heart," I joked. She didn't smile. "Hold still." She cleaned the wound with something that smelled like smoke and mint, then ground a paste from leaves and roots I didn't recognize, and pressed it to my skin. It burned like justice. And then, somehow, it eased. "You'll live," she said. "I wasn't asking. You're welcome anyway." She stood, wiped her hands on her skirt, and turned to leave. "Wait," I said. She stopped. I don't know what they told you about me, I began. She turned back. They told me you're a ranger, that you kill when you're told, that you follow the law. And do you believe that? She studied me. Her eyes were slow, heavy. I believe men do what they're paid to do, but not always what they know is right. And then she was gone. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, at the cracks in the plaster, at the night pressing its weight against the walls. Something inside me shifted that night. Not just because she healed me, but because for the first time in a long time, someone looked past the badge and didn't flinch. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Her face lingered in the corners of the room like a prayer someone forgot to finish. And somewhere deep inside, I knew I hadn't come to Esperanza just to chase shadows in the brush. I'd come to find her. But the river doesn't forgive easy, and neither does love when it shows up where it isn't wanted. So I ask you now, if the line between law and love begins to blur, which side do you hold? Because I didn't know it then. But soon I'd have to choose. If your heart starts to beat for someone you're not supposed to love, do you silence it, or do you follow it straight into the fire? The next morning, the sun came up slow, like it didn't want to look this town in the eye. The streets of Esperanza stayed quiet, save for the horses groaning under the weight of stillness. I pulled my boots on slow ribs aching with each breath, that healing paste still clinging to my skin like a second chance I wasn't sure I deserved. I hadn't seen Camilla since she left my room, but I could still feel her. It's a strange thing, how one touch can change the weight of a place. The same wooden floor I'd limped across the day before now felt different beneath my feet, like it remembered her footsteps, like it missed her. I told myself it was just gratitude, that I was fixating because I was alone, wounded, far from any real tether. But a man knows when he's lying to himself. I saddled my horse and rode out to the edge of town where the brush crept like a warning. Sheriff Delgado had said cattle were vanishing, men turning up torn or never found at all. We followed the trail, me and a boy named Mateo, who barely spoke, but could track a hawk's shadow through wind. We found prints, boot marks, something else too. Hooves, but wrong, too wide, too deep, as if something heavier than any horse had passed through. Mateo called it La Bestia. I just called it trouble. But even as the sun dropped low and the prairie started to whisper, my thoughts stayed tangled in that healer's shawl, in her calm, in the heat that passed between us, without a single word about it. That night, I went looking for her. Not for another salve, not for answers, just her. She lived on the far edge of Esperanza, just past the chapel, and the graves of men who died too young and too forgotten. Her home was made of mud and stone, candles burning in the windows, herbs hanging like prayers above the door. I knocked once, soft. "Come in," she said. No surprise in her voice, like she'd been expecting me since sunrise. I stepped inside, took my hat off, stood there feeling like a child in church, awkward, reverent, unsure. "You're walking better," she said, not looking up from the bundle she was tying. "You healed me." "I treated you," she corrected. "Healing comes from within. Then why do your hands still burn on my skin?" She paused, looked up. We stood in silence for a long time. The kind that bends the air. The kind that only two people carrying secrets can share. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "I know. You're a ranger. They talk about men like you. They say you follow orders, that you took part in the raids south of the river, that you watched women scream and didn't blink." I clenched my jaw, looked away. I've done things I don't talk about, I said. Things I regret. Things I try to outrun. And do I look like forgiveness to you? She asked, her voice flat. No, I said, you look like truth. She blinked once. The fire behind her cracked. The smell of dried rosemary filled the space between us. Truth, she whispered. That's a dangerous thing to want in a town like this. I've never been more tired of lies. She turned then, fully, walked past the herbs and the soft humming altar to a chair by the fire. I lost someone, she said. I sat across from her. Who? My brother. Shot by a man wearing a badge like yours. He was 14, carrying grain to my grandmother. I didn't speak. I didn't apologize. Because grief like that doesn't want apologies. It wants acknowledgement. It wants to be seen. I'm not that man, I said. But you wear the same symbol, she answered. And I live in a place where that's the only language people understand. I looked into her eyes, into all the pain, all the steel, all the longing buried under years of silence. I don't want to be the law anymore, I said, barely a whisper. I just want to be real, even if it's only with you. She stared at me, and I saw the war behind her gaze, the pull between rage and softness, between memory and desire. Then she stood, walked over, and placed her hand on my chest. I can feel your heartbeat, she said. Is that a good thing? It means you're still alive, and it means you're still capable of loving something you shouldn't. We didn't kiss. Not then. That would have been too easy. Instead, she let her hand linger for a breath longer, then walked away, deeper into the house, leaving me with a fire I couldn't name, and a question I still carry like a scar. If you have to betray everything you were to become the man she needs, is that truly betrayal? Or finally becoming free? Because in that moment, with nothing but silence, and her touch still echoing through my bones, I started to wonder. Maybe honor isn't something you wear. Maybe it's something you choose, even if the world calls it wrong. If love meant losing everything that gave your name weight, would you still whisper theirs like a prayer? The nights in Esperanza grew colder as winter crept in from the north. The kind of cold that seeps through bone and memory alike. I'd lie awake some nights in that tiny room above the livery, wrapped in wool and regret, staring at the cracked ceiling like it held the answers I couldn't find in my badge or my Bible. The wound on my side was nearly gone, but something else had taken its place. A different kind of ache. The kind you don't stitch shut. The kind that starts with the sound of a name whispered under your breath in the dark. Camila. I said it like a secret, like a promise I had no right to make. Each day I rode further into the brush with Mateo. We found signs. Blood, torn leather, drag marks through the dust that vanished into the cactus fields. Men were dying, and yet I couldn't stop thinking about her, about the night she touched me, about the story behind her eyes, and about the war I knew was coming, not out in the wild, but inside my own chest. Sheriff Delgado pulled me aside one morning, just outside the cantina. "You're getting close to her," he said. I didn't answer. "She's dangerous." "Not in the ways that matter. She's Mexican. Her father was a revolutionary. Her brother died in a skirmish you Rangers covered up, and half the town thinks she's a witch." I looked him in the eye, and what do you think? I think you're walking toward a fire with your eyes wide open. I said nothing, because he was right, and I didn't care. That afternoon, I rode alone, through the arroyo, across the flats, down to the river where the water ran black and slow. I let my horse drink, sat on the bank, listened to the silence, and that's when I heard her. "Behind me. You always run from the town like it's chasing you," Camilla said. I turned, startled, then relieved. "I could say the same of you." She walked up beside me, sat without asking, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. "I come here to remember," she said. "Your brother?" She nodded. "He was buried near here. We couldn't afford a priest. I said the prayers myself." Silence again, heavy. I reached into my coat, pulled out the badge, held it between us like a sin. "I don't know what this means anymore." "To them," she asked, "it means power. And to you?" She looked out at the river. "To me, it means the same thing your hands mean to me now, capable of healing or harm." I wanted to tell her I'd never hurt her, that I'd burn that badge if it made her safe, that I'd run into the desert barefoot and bleeding if she'd just ask me to. But I said nothing, because sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it just sits beside the river and hopes the silence will speak for you. She reached out, took the badge from my hand, held it up to the sun. "You can't change the past," she said, "but you can decide what you carry into the future." Then she set it gently in the dust between us. "You don't need this to be a good man." I looked at her. "I need you to believe I can be one." She turned to me then. "I already do." We kissed, not like a man and woman chasing fire, but like two people who'd been cold for too long. And for that one moment, the river stopped whispering. The sky held its breath. And I knew. This was real, and it was wrong, and it was mine. Later, I rode back into town alone. Delgado was waiting at the edge of the main street, arms crossed, face carved in stone. "You were with her." I didn't lie. He nodded once, slow. "Then I can't protect you anymore." "Was that ever your job?" "No," he said, "but it was your badges." And just like that, I understood. My life had split down the middle. There was the law, and there was her, and I could no longer hold both in my hands. So I ask you now, when the fire starts inside you, burning through every title and uniform and rule you've ever lived by, do you run from it? Or do you step inside and let it consume you whole? Because I had already made my choice. I just hadn't yet paid the price. If a single choice can turn your whole world to ash, do you still make it, just to feel something real? I remember the night it all burned down, not the town, but the story I'd been telling myself, about honor, about law, about who I was and what I owed. Funny how fast a man can go from standing tall in a silver star to kneeling in the dust with nothing but blood on his hands and her name on his lips. It started with a scream, not from Camilla, from a ranch boy, maybe 16. Came galloping into town on a mare foaming at the mouth, yelling about fire in the West Hills, about cattle torn apart, about bodies, his father, his uncle, left behind like broken prayers. Sheriff Delgado sounded the bell. By the time I saddled up, half the town was already gathering arms, dousing torches, sharpening blame. I rode hard. The sky was red before we even cleared the ridge. Not from sunset, from smoke. Thick, black, choking. I couldn't see the stars, couldn't feel my badge. Just heat. And the sick weight in my gut that told me the beast we'd been tracking had found its feast. We reached the ranch too late. 3 men dead, their faces barely human. The walls scorched. Tracks leading south, toward the river, and toward her. I rode faster than I ever had. Trees whipped my shoulders, branches clawed at my face, and in my head a single thought pulsed like a drum. Please, not her. Please, not her. When I got to Camilla's, her door was wide open, no candles lit, no fire burning, just silence. I called her name, no answer. Then I saw it, on the table, my badge, polished clean, and beside it, a note. It wasn't long, just 4 words. "They're coming." I ran. I grabbed the badge, shoved it in my coat, and turned to leave, when a sound behind me froze me in place. Footsteps. Not hers. Delgado stepped out from the shadows. "She told you?" he asked. "Told me what?" "That the killings weren't from bandits or animals. They were ritual, sacrifice." I stared. "You think she's behind this?" I asked, incredulous. "I don't think, I know. She saved me." "And how do you know that wasn't part of it?" he snapped. "You're not from here. You don't know what she was raised in. Her father led the blood circle before the revolution. There are things buried in her people's past that you don't understand. She's not her past." Delgado stepped closer. His eyes were tired, but hard. "She's hiding something." "I don't care," I said. "I'll find her. I'll protect her." He scoffed. "You still wearing that badge?" I pulled it out, held it up between us. Then I dropped it, let it hit the floor. "You tell me." He stared at me a long time, then nodded once, cold and final. "If you find her," he said, "you'd better pray to whatever God she still believes in that she's innocent. Because if she's not, she burns." He turned and walked out. I rode again, toward the river, toward the border, toward the place where her tracks had led. The stars were back by then, pale and distant, like they couldn't bear to look too closely. I found her near the old mission ruins, kneeling in the dirt, her hands stained red, but not from blood, from herbs, from earth, from something ancient. She turned slowly when she heard my steps. No fear in her eyes, just sorrow. "You came?" "Of course I did." "They think I'm a witch," she said softly. "Are you?" She smiled. "Bitter, beautiful. No more than you're still a ranger." I dismounted, walked to her. She stood, face to face. "Nothing between us now but the truth. I've done things," she said. "Rituals, prayers, old things passed down by women who were hunted for knowing too much. But I've never harmed a soul. Not once. I believe you. You shouldn't. But I do." She looked past me, toward the hills. The smoke had faded, but the smell still clung to the wind. "I think something's coming," she whispered. "Something old, something angry." I took her hand. "Then we face it, together." And for the first time she didn't pull away. "So, I ask you, if you had to burn your name, your honor, your past, just to hold the one hand that made you feel alive, would you?" Because I did. And I never once wished I hadn't. If love leaves a scar on your soul, and honor leaves you alone, which one do you carry to your grave? The river was high that night, swollen from storms in the mountains. It moved like a dark, breathing thing, fast, full of secrets, washing away whatever dared to step too close. Camilla stood by the bank, wind in her hair, and I stood beside her, heart loud, hands trembling, the weight of everything I had left behind pressing into my ribs. I'd thrown the badge in the dust days ago, walked away from law, from duty, from the version of myself that could walk into a room, flash a silver star, and not wonder what he saw in the mirror. But peace doesn't follow you just because you give something up. Sometimes it waits, lurks, like a shadow with a debt to collect. We had one night, maybe 2, before the town came for her, and me, and whatever we had managed to build out of ash and stolen time. Delgado had made it clear. He'd convinced the town she was behind the deaths, the disappearances, the blood in the brush. It didn't matter that it wasn't true. It didn't matter that we'd found the real killers. Deserters from the north, hiding behind fear and stories, masked as spirits in the dark. Truth dies fast in places built on superstition, and when it does, love dies with it, unless you hold on like hell. Camilla sat down on a rock by the water. The moon caught her cheekbone. She looked like a painting left out in the storm. "I used to come here with my brother," she said quietly. "Before he was taken. He used to say the river knew everything, past, future, sins, secrets. Said it never judged, only carried." I knelt beside her. "And what does it carry for you now?" She didn't answer right away. Then, regret, maybe love, maybe something heavier. I reached for her hand. She didn't flinch. "Camilla," I whispered. "They're coming. By morning. I can get us across. There's a town on the other side. Small, quiet. They don't ask questions. We could start again." She turned toward me, eyes like midnight prayers. "I'm tired of running," she said. "I'm not," I told her. "Not if I'm running toward you." Silence, but this time it didn't ache. She leaned in, kissed me, soft, final, and then she stood. Then we cross. We moved quick, packed nothing. Took only the horse, the rifle, and a satchel of herbs she wouldn't leave behind. The river crossing was rough, current fast, footing uncertain, but we made it. Soaked, shivering, alive. We camped on the other side under a grove of cottonwoods. Built a fire from driftwood. Sat close. She sang, quietly. A song from her grandmother. Words I didn't know, but felt deep anyway. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt clean. But peace doesn't last. Just before dawn, I heard the hoofbeats. 6 riders. Across the river. Lanterns high, rifles ready. Delgado at the front. I stood, raised my hands. He didn't shout, didn't threaten. He just said, "Come back, alone. She won't be harmed, we just want the truth." And I knew that was the lie men tell right before they start shooting. I turned to Camilla. She stood, wrapped the shawl tighter. Her face calm. Too calm. "I'll go," she said. "No. They won't stop unless they think I surrendered. They'll kill you." She stepped forward, pressed her hand to my chest. "Then don't let them." She kissed me once more, then turned, walked toward the river, and I knew this was the moment the world tests you, the kind of moment that rewrites your soul, where the choice isn't between law and crime. It's between survival and love. I raised the rifle. Delgado shouted, "Don't!" But I fired. Not at them. At the lantern. Darkness swallowed the river. Chaos followed. Gunshots. Horses panicking. Men cursing. One fell into the water, screaming. I grabbed Camilla's hand. We ran. Into the trees, into the dark. Into whatever came next. By the time they regrouped, we were gone. We kept moving. Days, weeks, over hills, through valleys. Names changed, clothes worn thin. But love stayed. Not loud, not wild, but true. She built a garden in a town that didn't know her name. I fixed fences, played guitar in a bar on Sundays. And every now and then, when the wind turned just right, we danced. Under the stars, no music, no rules, just us. So I ask you now, if loving someone costs you your name, your country, your peace, but gives you a soul you can finally live with, was it too high a price? Because I chose her, and every morning, when she smiles across the table, hands wrapped around warm coffee, I know this much. The river remembers everything, but it also forgives, and so do I.